Okay. So you've got your patient in the office. They just had their scan. You've looked at it together. You know, there's not any sort of sinusitis that you're going to need to address. Talk to us about the Neuromark Gen 3 device specifically.
These generation 1, 2, 3, is this just for Neuromark or is this for all the posterior nasal nerve ablation devices? Like when you're referring to this multiple generations?
The Neuromark has 3 generations.
Got it. Okay. So specific to them.
Yeah. Well, the Ryanair has a 2nd generation, which is an improvement on the first. And then the Clarifix has, I think it did undergo a small change, but it's pretty much the same device that's been around since 2017. And so the difference with the Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 of the Neuromark is a few things. The number of leaflets, meaning that the device is really cool. I say it looks like butterfly wings that open up. So these 4 little leaflets on the end that deploy out of a small little flexible but malleable tube. And the nice thing about it deploys and opens up like butterfly wings is even if I can't see where the PNN, posterior nasal nerve, is coming out, I can deploy the device and push it over to the side, and it is going to tell me if it's making good contact. So that's the situation when there's a really bad septal deviation, and for whatever reason, I don't want to take that patient to the operating room and do a septoplasty, or they don't want to do that. They just want their postnasal drainage better. I can slide that in without having to actually see and make contact because the machine, the graphic user interface, is telling me if I have good contact or not. And that's it's an advance that was there with generation 1, but it's progressed over the next 2 and 3 generations. So for instance, now it only takes half a second to tell me if I'm making good apposition or good contact, whereas before it took 6 seconds to figure that out.
And is that, I mean, Neuromark is it uses radiofrequency.
Yes.
But talk about the impedance part of the technology, which I think is what you're saying as far as like letting you, like giving you the feedback of whether you're in good contact with the tissue and maybe if the tissue has been treated enough, right?
Yeah, more of the latter. So what's funny is when you talk to the engineers about, hey, tell me about impedance, I kind of get it, but what does impedance really mean? And they get all technical, they'll go through this complex formula. Impedance is really like the tissue opposition to the energy going in. So it's kind of related to water content, but if I had to summarize it, I would define it as impedance changes as you deliver energy to that tissue. And once the impedance reaches a certain point, the instrument and the whole device knows it's reached that exact impedance that it needs to do to deliver the appropriate energy. Not too much, not too little, just right. So it's a Goldilocks thing. It will give you the appropriate amount of energy. And sometimes that takes 5 seconds. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds. It's different for each time you deploy the energy.
Because it depends on, like, I assume if you inject, you're changing the impedance if you're infiltrating with lidocaine or something.
Yeah.
Versus if you've got more edema or less edema, like it depends.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So how much fluid content is in the tissue, whether or not there's a gel in the nose or on top of the tissue, whether or not the tissue is edematous from underlying allergies or inflammation, all those make a difference.
And there must be like a set endpoint for how much impedance you want to reach, or that determines ablation?
Yeah, so that's where the engineers have figured out what degree of impedance is required to perform that neurolysis, to injure the nerve. And that's the sweet spot. And, thank goodness that they figured that out, because we can't tell by just looking at the tissue. When you're doing it, nothing's really happening. Every now and then you hear a snap, crackle, pop, but that's about it. There's no cautery, there's no smoke. There's a little bit of blanching of the tissue, but that's about it.
Initially, I thought when you were saying, when you put the, what's the proper word, the wand in, or the leaflets, and the leaflets open up, what's the right word for it?
Well, the wand is probably the right word.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you put the wand in and you open the 4 leaflets like the butterfly and you get feedback, it's not necessarily are all my leaflets touching where it needs to be, but the leaflets that are touching the tissue, the machine's going to tell me for those contact points when my ablation is completed.
Correct. So there's 4 leaflets, 2 on each side, 2 on the left of the wand, 2 on the right of the wand. but you tell the device if you're operating on the left or the right. So it knows, let's say you're operating on the patient's right side, it's only going to deploy energy to the leaflets on the left side. So that those left ones are going to contact and deliver energy to the lateral nasal wall. And the leaflets on the right side, which are against the septum, basically, those are not going to have any energy delivered to it.
And can you talk just for people who may have seen Gen 2 and are in their mind thinking about kind of having the different levels of leaflets and kind of how you kind of tucked it around the middle turbinate. I think I was always a little more intimidated by that Gen 2 device because there was just a lot going on. So for people who are thinking that, to kind of help paint the picture of what the Gen 3 looks like now.
Yeah, you're spot on. So Gen 2 was better than Gen 1, but that it has, just like Gen 1, it has two sets of leaflets. So there's a distal set of leaflets on Gen 2 and then a proximal set of leaflets. And sometimes those would crisscross a little bit. And like you said, Ashley, it can be a little intimidating trying to get all of these little leaflets to line up and tuck into the right spot. And so the benefit of the Gen 3 is they took out those proximal leaflets. Now you just have one set and there's no crisscrossing. It's so much simpler, so much easier. And if there is anyone out there who tried Gen 1 or Gen 2 and got frustrated with the amount of leaflets, I definitely would encourage you to try the Gen 3 because it does just do a very, very nice job of simplifying things. And it's remarkably faster too. Like that's the other big advance is it'll deliver the energy usually within 10 to 15 seconds. And you repeat that 3 times per side, roughly. You can do more if you want to. As before with Gen 2, it would take 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 minutes to deliver the energy.
Gotcha. So a lot faster and slightly different design.